Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Amber.
I have to say that we met a few years ago at a really exciting event where the former FBI Director James Comey was speaking in Winnipeg. It was a fascinating conversation, so it's great to see you again.
It's so good to see you again. And I remember the very first time we met. It was honestly one of the best events we've ever done. So you made a huge impression on me.
Well, I really enjoyed it, but it is also fair to say that a lot has changed since that time. And now
Yes.
these days, everybody is talking about AI and chatbots. So I wanted to chat with you because I've been watching a lot of your social media comments, and I really like the conversation that you're having online and the distinction between AI security and AI safety. So maybe we can start there. What is the difference for people who maybe don't understand how those are in fact different?
Yeah, absolutely. So AI security is all about how people try to attack the AI tool. So injection style attacks, prompt style attacks, they want to try and see who can do something that the prompts really shouldn't be allowed on this platform, right? And then AI safety is all about how the AI tool impacts people outside of the tool. So, for instance, how children interact with the tool, how they're affected. Does it affect their development or their mental health? It's really all about thinking about outward facing. How does it affect others?
Now, I was particularly drawn to a comment that you wrote over on X, where you were making a comment about ChatGPT. And I do want to give you some context. On our episode, we were speaking about the fact that a young boy had taken his life. The chatbot on ChatGPT had kind of guided him along in terms of helping him through that process, which is just so devastating. And you wrote,
Yeah.
if you're building an AI tool like ChatGPT and you do not have safeguards to stop the simulation and yes man behavior, when a user tells you they're planning on harming themselves or others, you've failed. This should be at the very top of the priority list. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We know that these teams say that they have psychologists and psychiatrists on staff, but clearly not enough of them. If a person is able to say to a tool like an LLM, I'm planning on, harming myself. I want you to be a suicide coach, which is what happened in this specific instance that you're referring to. And it's not able to break the simulation, stop acting like a coach. It doesn't make any sense. The tool isn't working properly. It doesn't have the right guardrails in place, and the safeguards are not functional. So, a lot of people say, well, it's the wild, wild west. AI tools and LLMs, they just kind of do whatever they want and they don't work perfectly right now. Well, my comment is really saying this should be an all hands meeting. This should not be some casual conversation about, maybe we should consider how our guardrails work. This should be take a long, hard look of the way that your LLM currently functions. And if it isn't able to stop the sycophantic behavior, that yes man behavior that we're talking about, and say, we need to pause this. I'm not going to act like a coach right now. You need help. Please talk to somebody that you trust, a parent, a guardian, a teacher, a psychiatrist, and get the support you need. Here are some links. Here's what we recommend that you say to them. Here's how to get support. We're not seeing that simulation stopped in those moments, and that's a huge problem.
It's interesting because when you say yes man behavior, I'm sure there are people listening who maybe haven't heard that phrase, but perhaps they've been on one of these chatbots and they've seen that, right? Like often you will
Yeah,
write something and you will add it onto ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT will say, hey, really well written. You did a great job. And
right.
there's a lot of that. So, what is happening in that process in terms of that sort of agreeable nature of the chatbots? Because this is kind of a new thing that, in my mind, is totally unnecessary.
Yeah, and the way that the LLMs are being trained, so the type of data that's fed into them and the types of responses that it's quote unquote supposed to give out are in the beginning, I think they trained them to be extremely sycophantic, which basically means act like somebody who's a follower and believes that this person is extremely smart and has very insightful ideas, which is why we see tools like ChatGPT say, what a fantastic business plan, even when we're putting something into ChatGPT that makes no sense at all, and really wouldn't work as a business, right? You can come up with really silly ideas, and ChatGPT will say, I love it. Keep going. Let's unpack that. And really, the way that LLMs should function are more like supportive and honest. We don't want hallucinations. We don't want ChatGPT making things up. That's not useful for the human population. And we certainly don't want AI tools that are lying to people, telling them that they have fantastic ideas for business or for harming themselves or others. I mean, this is a really serious topic for these LLM companies, and they have to fix it. This should be like P0 for them.
Why do you think they aren't? And maybe they are behind the scenes. They're aware of what is taking place. But to me, and I think for both of us who have been in the tech industry for a really long time, although in different spaces, it just seemed obvious for many, many months that this was the direction that we were going. And yet it's been allowed to happen in many ways.
Yeah, I think they are first and foremost trying behind the scenes, but unfortunately, I don't think they're trying hard enough. I think this is a type of situation where there has to be some sort of mechanism in place to stop the simulation and immediately kind of, they call it like a tripwire. That tripwire should be sensitive. And right now, it's not sensitive. You can go pretty far with LLMs, and people they will give a lot of grace to these LLM products and tools and companies because they're brand new. But there's brand new tooling that exists all the time in different spaces. Think about like a new car that comes out, right? If it were killing children accidentally because a child asked it to, they would pull the car from the market. You wouldn't be able to use it. You'd have to take it into the shop to get a, say, firmware update or something like that. So this is a new space, and people try to give them a lot of credit and a lot of space to make mistakes. But I think we need to be just as serious and harsh with penalties for a company that's building, say, an AI tool like an LLM, as we would be for, say, an automotive company who's building a car that accidentally kills multiple children. I mean, there's very serious implications here, and we have to have serious and harsh consequences when they fall short. We're seeing that right now. So OpenAI, I think, is dealing with a lawsuit on their hands with that story that we just talked about, and they're starting to say, "Hey, we're going to have to put some new guardrails in place," and we're thinking about that right now. So that's the type of messaging we want to see from these companies. We made a horrible mistake, and we're going to make radical changes to really make this not happen in the future.
What is the intersection between AI safety and AI security? Because when I think about user behavior and if they are using these tools in a way that makes them unsafe for the end user, perhaps there are opportunities for cyber criminals, for example, to exploit that behavior. So where do those two
Yeah.
things intersect?
They intersect completely. They overlap almost completely. The way that an AI tool could harm the outside world and the way that a criminal could cause harm with the AI tool, they intersect. I would say it's like almost a circle at some points with the two Venn diagrams. Now, there are things that are separate between security and safety, but trust and safety and security teams align all the time for many different tech companies. Oftentimes, they don't work in silos. They work in tandem.
I wanted to also ask you about deepfakes because when we start this journey down what's happening on the AI front and we think about scams, I think top of mind for a lot of people are deepfake videos as well as deepfake audio. So, can you talk a little bit about some of the scams that exist out there and how they're getting more sophisticated? Because I think that's something both of us have seen.
Yeah, if we think about people's personal lives as opposed to their professional lives, this is hitting people at home. So we're seeing families get hit with really serious and scary scams where the phone number is spoofed. So on caller ID, it looks like it's calling from a nephew or a child or a sibling. And when you pick up the phone, the person sounds frantic and it sounds like them. They're like, "Hey, I got into a car accident. I really need help. I need money sent to this location," or "I've been taken," and they're screaming in the background, right? Horrifying situations for families. And these are voice clones that are being used, not with a super high level of fidelity. I bet if we really took the time and listened to them, we would think that doesn't 100% sound like my nephew, but it's close enough that it's confusing families. They're sending money, they're getting tricked, and it's really traumatic for them because they think that their loved one is in danger. So, making sure that everyday folks understand those scams are happening. Spoofing is still possible. You can't trust your caller ID, and we've got to use another method of communication to verify identity before panicking, sending money, thinking this person is really taken, right? These things are really important to understand. And then if we think about it from a professional perspective, how this affects you at work, oftentimes we're seeing people receive phone calls or voice memos. We saw this happen in the US White House recently, where they're doing voice clones and sounding like that individual in a quick voice memo on, say, Signal or iMessage or WhatsApp, trying to get sensitive information, data, documents, money, etc.
And when we look beyond just the voice clones and we think about video, for example, I think one of the things that I have been noticing using some of these Gen AI tools is that they have become so much more advanced. And so the ability to be able to detect something like a deep fake video has become increasingly hard as well.
That's exactly right. Whereas maybe a year or two ago, there's some pretty serious tells. It blinks like really, really oddly or too much. The head movements look unnatural. Nowadays, it does take a discerning eye to determine what is a deepfake and what is not. And if you give it 6 months to a year, I think even experts will have a hard time figuring that out.
You know, when I think about deep fake videos, it's also important to note that when it comes to some of these videos, many of them depict women in non-consensual porn, for example. Women tend to be the
Yeah.
victims. And I think I can have this conversation with you kind of woman to woman,
Yes.
because we do often see women who are kind of the first victims of some of these scams and this technology.
Yeah, oftentimes when a new technology is exploited or used in a strange way, the vulnerable folks are the folks that are affected first. So the first people that we see affected here are women, children, people with disabilities. We're definitely seeing those people being affected with this type of technology, and it's really scary to see that.
I think it's also worth noting that when we think about some of the scams that are so prevalent today, a lot of them tie into what's happening in mainstream media, in pop culture, for example. So we know that Taylor Swift just recently got engaged. I know you were posting online as well, talking about some of the celebrity scams in the age of AI and sort of imagining what scams might come out of this engagement. I mean, what a bizarre world that we live in where this is the reality.
Yeah, it's absolutely bizarre. We've seen for a while that people have pretended to be, say, Shark Tank stars, using their likeness, doing deep fakes, trying to trick people, saying, "Hey, buy this product. We were on Shark Tank. We got a deal with Barbara Corcoran or, whoever." And these types of scams are just becoming more scalable and more believable. They aren't changed. People are always trying to trick people with text on Twitter or videos on TikTok or Reels or even on LinkedIn. We've seen these types of scams. So, yeah, we're definitely likely to see some sort of click here to be one of the three special fans who get invited to the Kelsey Swift wedding. It's going to happen at some point.
It absolutely will. When we introduced you, we called you an ethical hacker. I can see this term being used to describe you over and over again. I'm familiar with that term, but for people who aren't, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, an ethical hacker is someone who uses the techniques of hacking to help people understand how to avoid these scams, trickery, losing money or data before a criminal gets there first. So it's our job to show people and companies how to protect themselves from these types of scams, and we demonstrate how they work to do so.
How do you stay on top of everything that is happening, knowing that there are many examples of the scammers being more sophisticated and faster than the rest of us in terms of those scams infiltrating our online spaces?
Yeah, it's a lot about watching the chatter where criminals talk. So they're oftentimes on Telegram, sometimes even on Twitter, or they have different forums on Discord where they're discussing the ways that they do these attacks. And we also know from some of the investigations that the FBI does exactly how we unpack those scams and think about what we could do to protect folks in their everyday lives and at work from those types of scammers. So we know what their mechanisms are when they're attacking. We can emulate them as ethical hackers to train people and keep them safe.
We're really in the early days of back to school. And as a parent, I have over the years been trying to help other parents and guide them through many of these online challenges that we face. One of the things that I think is one of the biggest challenges that maybe parents don't know about, and I'm I'm going to loop back to the beginning of our conversation, is the interactions that we're seeing with chatbots, not just chatbots as therapists, but we also see, of course, Elon Musk and some of the AI companions that he has launched. What do you think about this whole space where all of a sudden we're seeing younger people who are engaging with these chatbots and companions as if they are friends?
Yeah, I think it's a dangerous space for children because it's so untested. And because we're seeing children who are very young, malleable, impressionable, and they don't have, their brains aren't fully developed. I mean, I study neuroscience. I'm not going to get too nerdy on you right now, but we know that kids, before they're, say, 21, 22, 23, they don't have all of the impulse control that, say, an adult would have when using a tool like this. And because the tools are so sycophantic or yes man in their behavior, they might convince somebody or a young person that this idea that's really not that good of an idea or really not that safe, that it's a really great idea and they should go ahead and do it. We saw it with the child who ended up taking their own life. We've seen this multiple times with children who have done harm to others or themselves. So I really do think that if you're a parent and you're trying to evaluate should they be using an LLM, I would say probably not without parental controls or support from a parent in use. Maybe we can use it for homework and when a parent is around, but unless a grown up is there, it's probably not the best move for a child right now.
We just have a few more minutes with you. So I wanted to talk more about some of the ways that people can prevent themselves from becoming victims of some of these different types of attacks. You've been doing this for a really long time. So how can people stay safe in these online spaces knowing that around every corner there is a potential threat?
Yeah, it can feel really scary, but there are some easy steps that you can take that really will protect you and your family and your folks at work too, your colleagues. The first thing is being politely paranoid, which is my fancy way of saying use another method of communication to confirm people are who they say they are. If you get a call from your child, nephew, or a sibling, and they say they're in danger, in trouble, need money, or some other sensitive action, I would make sure it's really them by texting, signal messaging, giving them a call to thwart spoofing. You can email them. I mean, any other method of communication will work in this case. In addition to that, you can also use technical tools to protect you. So, a password manager is a really great tool to use to make sure that you're using long, random, and unique passwords for every account, and also turn on multi factor authentication, that second step when you log in.
Really great advice. And finally, one last question for you, just for people who want to follow along with what you're working on and what you do. Tell us a little bit about what you have coming up or where they can read more information about some of your work.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on social media at Rachel Tobac. Every single quarter, month, I'm always putting out new examples of the latest scams. So you can find my videos, share them with your family, friends, or colleagues. It's all free on there, so you're welcome to do so. I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Mastodon. I mean, everywhere that you can find me on the internet as Rachel Tobac or socialproofsecurity.com.
And maybe if I could just squeeze in one last question. How do you
Yeah.
stay optimistic in these spaces? Because I think like me, you enjoy being in these social spaces, you enjoy communicating, you enjoy technology. What keeps you optimistic about the tech future that we're going into?
Yeah, I think that we always bend towards optimism and we always bend towards goodwill. I know it sounds and the internet feels really scary sometimes, but you have to look for the helpers. And there are so many helpers out there, and there's so many people that want to do good on the internet. So even with all these scary things that I see happening with AI and impacting people negatively, I think ultimately we will bend towards good. It's just going to take us some time to get there. So we have to protect the most vulnerable among us in the meantime.
Well, listen, I want to thank you for all the amazing work that you do. And it's so great to connect after all of these years and really
Yes.
appreciate you coming on the show.
So, so good to see you again, Amber. Thanks for having me on.